This week on Newsnight, we spotlight the Family Court of Australia. 1 in 3 marriages ends in divorce. A former Newcastle judge speaks out about recent controversial changes. And successful Australian actress Helen Morse, in a rare interview, speaks about an exciting new role in a local production.
Different planets.
Keeps it interesting, eh?
That's right.
What are we all like?
Smug.
I am not smug.
Yes, you are.
I don't even know what smug is. How can I be smug?
All of you, living at the centre of everything.
Well, it's not really the centre.
No, you think it is?
Surely New York or Los Angeles.
Ah, but you hate the Yanks too.
Do we?
You look down on them too.
There is a strange relationship between Europe and the States.
You can't stand them. That's pretty strange. You look down on them and on us.
If you want to know the truth, we don't even think about Australia. There, never think about it.
It's probably safe to say our rainfall for last month was the highest for April in at least 30 years. The Johnston family members aren't likely to argue. They're just some of the many Lake Macquarie people who suffered from the deluge and its consequences. Last week, Alan Johnston's 78-year-old mother and his invalid sister were victims of flash floods, the waters gushing inside the front door of their Burton Street home at Mount Hutton. He says waters rolled down from a new estate south of his mother's property. He says drainage systems have silted up, and while the Lake Macquarie City Council has built a retention area, he says that only works on paper, not in reality.
I think the council should have looked into it more closely, what the development was doing, how much water was going to come off the area, and firstly, clear the drains from their estate in the beginning, and then keep them clean. And that's the main problem. They haven't kept them clean, and the silt falling from the coming down from the new estate is just blocking up all the drains, and they just haven't been maintained.
Mr Johnston says he's approached the council and has been told the matter will be investigated.
But in the meantime, there's no drains there to cope with the water, so if it rains tonight, my mother's house goes underwater again. You know, they're looking at weeks. I'm after a solution now.
He says council has been aware of drainage problems for some time.
We've been onto them for years, absolutely years, to clean that drainage system behind me, and they haven't maintained it, have not maintained it one bit. If they'd have maintained the drains in the first place, they would have minimised the flooding in this particular area here, where the drains were 2 metres wide, 2 metres deep. We could hide ourselves in them. Now, they're 2 metres wide, all right, but they're only about 3 or 4 centimetres deep. 3-year-old child could walk straight across the drains now, whereas before it'd break its neck or drown.
Another Mount Hutton resident, Craig Starkey, says Auckland Road residents were flooded out of their homes as a direct result of an inadequate stormwater and drainage system. Many people are trying to pinpoint exactly who should accept responsibility for the heartbreak suffered by hundreds. Member for Charlestown, Richard Face, says other badly affected areas have come to his attention, but at this stage he doesn't want to attribute blame to any one person or organisation.
I think it's proper to say, though, that there could be some design faults, not intentionally done, in what has occurred with development in that area around Gateshead West and Windale in more recent years. There appears to be not adequate holding areas for the water of the magnitude that we saw in the last week.
He says he doesn't know, but land developers may have contributed to the problems at Gateshead West.
It may well be Landcom in providing inadequate holding areas themselves, and that's why I'm loath to blame the council, because the council have been extremely cooperative, and they're, like myself, thrashing around for an answer to find out how this happened.
Lake Macquarie Mayor Alderman Ivan Welsh also has ideas about what may have contributed to the severity of the floods.
Well, it's all act of God, but we do understand that there are some calculations being made by Landcom which may not be actually accurate. While I'm not saying that Landcom's responsible, we are checking on these figures to ascertain if there may be some responsibility to other parts.
In what areas do you think perhaps Landcom may have played a role?
Well, they've had developments in Gateshead West, and we've had a fair bit of flooding out there. Obviously, with the amount of rain we had, I don't think anybody's at fault. But if it proves that some of the calculations are wrong, well, I guess some people will have to get some repairs done.
What are you saying? If Landcom has made a mistake, it's going to have to pay some compensation?
Well, that's an if, but if that if is founded, yes.
Wouldn't a council have had to know at least what Landcom was doing in those areas?
Council's vaguely aware of what they're doing, but council's not responsible to override those developments because Landcom's a body to itself.
In the meantime, people have begun approaching the Lake Macquarie City Council for compensation. Deputy City Engineer Brian Ellis says many drainage systems are built to cope with 1 in 20-year storms, while many main road bridges are built to withstand 1 in 100-year storms. That sort of design is more expensive. Don't you think perhaps people who are paying their rates for a service deserve a proper service in that their houses aren't going to be flooded?
Well, it's like everything else. It's an economic thing, as I've said before. There are roads which go underwater. Certainly, I feel sorry for a lot of people that have had the problems. There are problems with some drainage systems, certainly in Windale, and some of those people that have had 3 foot of water or a metre through their properties. Those areas have got to be investigated and to see whether there's got to be amplification of the drainage to overcome those problems.
So is it possible the council is responsible in some way?
I don't think that's for me to say.
Mayor Alderman Welsh is just as careful. As far as people may be claiming against council's insurance is concerned, do you think they have a case? Have they got a right to claim?
They've got a right to claim, but I'm not going to say whether they've got a case or not.
This week, we examine the great coal debate. What are the proposed changes to the miners' long-established work practices? Why are the unions so resistant to change? How will thousands of local families be affected? The Miners' Federation and the Coal Association join us in a studio discussion to answer questions on the future of the Valley's founding industry.
The royal ship Britannia is a spectacular vessel and despite her 25 years looks almost as good as the day she was commissioned. The Queen's visit to Newcastle over the weekend gave Novocastrians a rare opportunity to view the ship close up. In Newcastle, the Britannia received one of the warmest welcomes of the Australian tour. But all good things must come to an end, and today she steamed out of Newcastle Harbour on her way home to the United Kingdom. As well-wishers waved her goodbye, staff at Nobby's Lighthouse sent best wishes for the trip. The Britannia replied that they all look forward to returning to friendly Newcastle.
Flew at about 70 feet above the water for 1 mile at 94 miles an hour. That day it was hidden away in Long Beach Harbor, not to reappear until today. At sunrise, it was to be towed from the hangar. A band was playing and breakfast was served for invited guests, dignitaries, and the press. But nothing worthwhile happens quickly. 4 hours after sunrise, technical problems were solved, and the Spruce Goose, all 400,000 pounds of it, lumbered, if you'll pardon the expression, out of the hangar. It was an occasion, complete with helicopters and the inevitable blimp. This re-emergence after 33 years of the mysterious wooden brainchild of a mysterious man. This plane was to have been the first of 5,000 flying ships designed to carry troops to battle in World War II. But the war ended before the prototype was ready. A misnomer, Spruce Goose. It's mostly birch, but nothing that flies rhymes with birch. Out in the warm sun today, on its way to a temporary berth, its sap must have run again. Next year, the Goose will be moved to a perch alongside the Queen Mary to become a tourist attraction. Its new owners hope it lays a golden egg.
Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. We've gone for main engine start. We have main engine start. America's first space shuttle. And the shuttle has cleared the tower.
Imagine going to your bank manager and telling him you want a loan to build a full-scale model of the US Space Shuttle. After you picked him up off the floor, he'd probably see you to the front door with a gentle, "We'll let you know." But that was just one of a series of obstacles overcome by a team of 27 Newcastle tradesmen who turned that idea into a reality. For the past 7 months, this shed in Wickham has been a centre of activity as the imposing shape started to take form. The bank manager liked the idea, so did a former US astronaut who sold the concept to the Japanese. So how did Paul Dewhurst, a former state dockyard employee, come to build this model in Newcastle?
I was in the US and some people said to me, "Can you build a full-size shuttle?" And I said, "Yes, we could." And they said, "Well, we've been talking to NASA and they say that you've built 2 1/4 size and we believe you're the only person to build it. Will you come to Las Vegas or San Diego and build it?" And we said, "No, we won't come to Las Vegas or San Diego because we didn't know anybody. And Newcastle being the hometown and knowing a lot of people here, it's an advantage to be able to call someone and explain precisely what you're doing without having to go through an hour's explanation before you get anywhere."
You see, this is not the first shuttle Paul has built. He has 2 quarter-scale models already to his credit. One toured more than 600,000 kilometres around Australia, appearing at displays and exhibitions.
We went on show in Adelaide in South Australia, Tea Tree Plaza. We arrived there on the 14th of November 1981. That was the day that Columbia landed the second time. So we parked it down the park and moved the truck away and then rang the newspapers and the television companies and said, "Hey, come and see what's in the park." Now,
this prankster with the developed
really
eye for PR has actually been building models since he was a little boy. Old kit aeroplanes made of balsa and tissue, rubber-powered planes and gliders too. By age 12 he had graduated to engine-powered models, some with control lines, some remote-controlled.
My mum's going to write a book. She's going to call it Plane Crazy.
He has a priceless collection of old model magazines, some dating back to the early 20s. Paul is such a model nut, he once built 6 in 1 week, but is quick to extol the virtues of his favourite pastime.
Youngsters who can involve themselves in activities which make them use not only their brains but basic skills, that they seem to be able to produce good work. They tend to be able to get jobs really easy. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with sport, because we regard this as a sport as well, but behind the sport is some basic skills as well.
Your hobby, in other words, has grown completely out of proportion.
Totally out of proportion. And I love every minute of it, I really do. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. If I didn't like what I was doing...
This latest venture is his biggest yet. The shuttle houses a video display with airline seating for 80 people. It'll be used at a futuristic expo in Japan. Some 5 million people are expected to pass through it. The Australian Trade Commission has now picked up on the idea and is promoting the company as a potential local exporter.
It's an unusual sort of product to promote. It is very exciting indeed, and it's just to be seen what sort of how many people actually require products of this size.
The $750,000 price tag is being paid by Gene Cernan, the last US astronaut on the moon. Paul was able to convince him the shuttle could only be built here.
The amount of skill that was not only at the State Dockyard in Newcastle but in many industries around here, unfortunately is being lost, and these are skills that were taught by hand and handed down from older tradesmen to younger guys, and that apprenticeship that I served at the dockyard over 5 years, I think was a little bit short, because even now there's guys here that I'm now working with, former dockyard employees, who can teach me so much over a period of time. It's just tremendous. It's really good to watch them work.
Well, what's the